How Minecraft Dungeons got abandoned.
Minecraft Dungeons is widely considered to be the most successful Minecraft spin-off, with over 25 million players and a
25 million is crazy. A modern day game kills for the opportunity to even just get 1 million. But we're talking here an extra zero and multiplied by a couple of times. Wow.
widely positive reception, Minecraft Dungeons was set to be big. After the game had a very successful update reviving interest in it in October 2022, players were optimistic about its future, but suddenly out of the blue, after almost a year of radio silence from developers, they would find that the game had been abandoned. What went wrong with Minecraft Dungeons? Why
A big problem of Minecraft Dungeons, I feel, was that it's Minecraft, and, well, if you're older, typically you don't really care that much about Minecraft. Minecraft's still a fun game to play, don't get me wrong, and there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But I mean, the older you get, the less interesting Minecraft sadly becomes. That's just the reality of things. And when Minecraft Dungeon came out and I saw it, I was like, wow, this looks good. But I never really felt the want to play it, even though it kind of looked good and people were generally happy about it and said it was good also. So I don't know. It's good, but it doesn't grab you in the way that you would expect.
did it lose popularity so fast, and why was it ultimately abandoned so suddenly by Mojang? Minecraft Dungeons, released in May 2020, is Minecraft's take on the dungeon crawler genre. Basically, you play as a character and complete various dungeons and missions, fighting off mobs, clearing objectives, gathering different weapons and abilities known as artifacts, all while leveling
So, it's Diablo 4 if Diablo 4 was a good game. Got it.
up, enchanting your gear to make it stronger, and finding items of rarer qualities. Now, unlike its failed counterpart, Minecraft Legends, of which I also made a video about here, Minecraft Dungeons was very positively received. It has great Steam reviews, and players generally state that they enjoyed the game. It's intuitive as well as easy to learn and understand. Its main combat loop is decently entertaining. The graphics and visual design of the various environments you enter are quite nice, and while the game is relatively simple compared to games of similar genres, it still manages to be quite
I mean, we're taking a kind of a big leap of faith here, saying that it's simple compared to other genres, and then you show Diablo 4. That is definitely a leap of faith.
enjoyable. You can also play with friends, of course making it even more fun. The game's core adventure is split into 3 sections. The mainland, which is what you get with the base game, costing about $20 featuring the main story, and then 6 other DLCs in other realms and dimensions, which added a variety of specifically themed levels and special items, as we'll get into later. Furthermore, upon beating
6 DLCs? That's a bit much, and I assume they also cost like $10 each or something.
the main game, you unlock adventure difficulty, which comes with new enchantments and a new level, and beating the game again on adventure difficulty will unlock the game's 3rd and hardest difficulty, apocalypse difficulty. Within each of
That's a pretty big jump from adventure to apocalypse. Yeah, a little bit strange. I kind of feel that there should be something in the middle, probably.
these difficulties also exist levels or tiers which multiply the difficulty of enemies, dropping a higher power level of items as well. But this is where the game's main issues begin to show. It takes about 4 to 6 hours to beat the main game on the default difficulty, not that long overall. And that's really all
True.
players who play the game do, as the harder difficulties are practically the same game again, with just a few different items. $20 for a game which only provides 4 to 6 hours worth of content for most players isn't really the best deal, even if the gameplay is decent. In fact, the game is so short that most Dungeons players will recommend you buy the more expensive Ultimate Edition for $40, which comes with the DLCs included. But the game obviously didn't have the
Oh, yeah, look at that. Creeping Winter. Yeah, all of this is almost $10, except this. This is 6 for some reason. Huh.
DLCs upon release. In fact, its first DLC wouldn't come until 2 months later, so players who initially bought the game and beat it within a few days were left with not much to do. This was a pretty common complaint in the game's early days, when no other content was available, and likely led to many players dropping the game pretty early because there simply wasn't anything else to do besides replay it on a harder difficulty.
This sounds like something that could be amazing with modding. You know, let players figure out how to do things on their own. Make players design their own stuff. This sounds absolutely insane for that.
And even players who really enjoyed the game, replaying it on harder difficulties, would eventually get bored of doing the same thing over and over. There wasn't really an end game, you would just play the same increasingly difficult missions again. Google Trends reflects this issue, as you can see that not long after release, the game had nosedived in popularity.
Wow.
It needed something fresh to bring players back. 2 months after Dungeons had released in July of 2020, the first DLC, Jungle Awakens, was added to the game, containing new missions and items, and ever since, there were new DLCs released roughly every 2 to 3 months up until July of 2021, a bit over a year after the game first.
I don't know. This is Australian dollars, right? How much is that in real money? Not sure.
Launched. The DLCs weren't free, and if you were a player who bought the game when it first released, you would have to keep buying them every time a new one released to play new content. And while the DLCs were solid and helped current players stay engaged with the new content they offered, for the majority of players who got the game upon release, beat it once then dropped it, seeing that they would have to buy new content probably wasn't convincing enough to get them to return. No matter how good the content is, if there's a paywall, it's simply going to be harder to get players to engage with it.
That's true, but I think, well, the big problem here is what it takes you 4 to 6 hours to beat the game for the first time, and then you're kind of like, you know, donezo technically. If the game takes 4 hours for you to beat, it costs $20, and then the DLC costs $10, and probably, let's be real, if the base game is 4 hours, then, you know, the DLC is going to be, what, 1 hour? 2 hours at best? That is not good. That is a huge red flag. For me, that sounds like wasting money. Dude, I would rather buy some fentanyl off the street, boy, than actually a DLC of that low quality. I mean, choices were made.
Anyways, the 6 DLCs drop and it is now December 2021. The game had lost quite a lot of popularity since its release in May of 2020. The DLCs didn't really do much in regards to attracting new players and attention to the game, and so Mojang announced that they would be shifting to a seasonal update model instead. On December the 14th, 2021, the
What do you mean seasonal update model thingy? That's almost the same as DLCs. It just sounds different. Was that a stupid attempt just to get people to come back?
first of the Minecraft Dungeons seasons would release, known as Cloudy Climb. This was the first attempt to resolve the game's main issue, that being its boring, repetitive, extremely luck-based, and grindy endgame. Announced during Minecraft Live 2021, Cloudy Climb would add a variety of features, but notably two things: a new game mode called The Tower, as well as an
Yeah, we all know that the tower's probably like endless, right?
Adventure Pass, effectively a battle pass that would reward players with a variety of exclusive cosmetics. Now, to remind you, the core issues with the game up to this point was the lack of endgame content to keep players engaged, and the fact that progression and replaying the game on harder difficulties was kind of boring. The Tower was meant to be that.
Does anyone else find Minecraft Dungeons to be becoming progressively more boring? Yes, grinding sucks. Yes, too hard. Yeah, yes, too hard. Okay, when your game is, by the way, not even too hard at the end game, and all you have to do is just repetitive grind, it's slug based. Yeah, if it's not even baseline hard, then oof. Yes, any other reason? No, lots of content left. No, I like suffering for hours on end for one weapon.
Solution to the endgame issue, and the Battle Pass was supposed to be a way of engaging the more casual mainstream players, giving them something additional to work towards and play.
A Battle Pass is just there to make more money. That's it. It's not supposed to engage people. It's supposed to, get Mojang more money.
for. So you can imagine that the Minecraft Dungeons player base was really hoping this update would be good enough to renew interest.
I have never heard anyone scream in their lives, "Yay, we're getting a battle pass!" Bro, when Overwatch 2 got its battle pass, people were begging for the return of loot boxes so the battle pass gets deleted, okay? Battle pass is not a good thing.
In a dying game. It was going to be an important update, that was for sure, and unfortunately what the players wanted didn't quite happen. After Cloudy Climb released, things weren't looking good. Over 70% of the people who watched the Mr. Epic's videos were still not subscribed. They need to change that clearly, no pressure. They should also check out his Patreon where they can get exclusive content, world downloads, plugins, and much more content never before released to the public. Anyways, one of Minecraft Dungeon's biggest YouTubers, 4am, would upload a video around this time discussing what much of the community was extremely disappointed about.
I want to start off this video by saying, I'm sorry guys. I apologize for hyping everyone in the past months for this big update because I think it is simply not fun. I apologize for stealing your time. I mean, I feel like
Ooh, that's rare. Someone on YouTube apologizing for things. Usually that only happens when you get demonetized. What?
stole your time by hyping up this update, by sharing my speculative take on it, what the rewards were going to be like, how epic this was going to be for the endgame players who were stuck kind of with no new content. I sincerely hoped that this update was going to fix that problem, but it simply didn't.
We'll start with the tower. The tower was basically a selection of about 30 floors, of which contained a variety of mobs and bosses
It's not even endless? Wow.
of increasing difficulty. At the end of every floor, players can pick one of 5 pieces of gear or can get an extra enchantment point. Upon beating the tower or dying, you'd also get one high-level item to keep. Now here were the issues with the tower. First of all, when you entered the tower, you couldn't actually bring any of your own items you'd earned and grinded for up to that point in.
That actually makes sense. I don't see this as too much of an honestly problem.
With you. You could only play with items you gathered from the tower, and the items you could get inside the tower after beating every floor couldn't be brought outside of the tower. So all the
Yeah, that makes sense, sadly.
items players had
But I get why people aren't happy about a decision like this, obviously. Hey, why not allow me to use the stuff I fund? It's a common complaint. I personally see not too many problems with this. Hey, it's a separate game mode technically or whatever. So, you know, it just is like it is.
grinded for outside of the tower up to that point were useless, and all the items players got in the tower were also useless as they couldn't be used elsewhere. Well, besides one item, which surely would be a good thing, right? When you beat the tower or die, you got to pick one of 3 items to bring outside of the tower with you, that was all. The items being better the further you got in the tower. I was told by Sayonaya, a player who has been active in the community and playing since day 1, who also provided me with a lot of information for this video, that the rewards for beating the tower were really good for the time spent playing it, so much so that almost all other methods players had of getting strong gear were now considered a waste of time. Each tower run would take 20 to 40 minutes, and the 5 items you got to choose from every floor were also always the same, meaning there wasn't much replayability to the tower.
Oh my god. I didn't talk about this at the start of the video, but I mean, I think it's time to talk about this, obviously. So the thing with this game, what the problem looks like is that everything's kind of super repetitive, and there's not a lot of things that can change. And the fact that you get the same loot every single floor without exception, that's just dumb.
Was either. The tower layout
Like, how do you make such a stupid mistake?
would change every few weeks, but overall, they got boring really fast. Ironically, the towers solved nothing and somehow only made the game worse as they made older content obsolete and made players feel everything they had grinded for up to that point
The classic Blizzard move, I see. Nice.
was useless. Players were not happy. Oh, and even funnier, when the tower first released, it was single player only, which many people were disappointed about, but also required you to play it online, meaning you couldn't play it without internet, despite it not involving any other players. The Battle Pass also wasn't receiving applause either. A lot of the free rewards weren't
Oh, really? A battle pass is not great. Who would have expected this?
That good or useful, especially to players who had been playing the game for a while. The paid version wasn't bad, the cosmetics and emotes were fine, but it was very grindy and didn't really do much to keep players entertained, especially
I'm assuming it's very grindy because somewhere here there's a buy battle pass levels button that you can click on, and it's something that Mojang wants you to do.
those who were already well into the late game. The challenges were also very boring and only served to make the game even more monotonous.
Let's say you are stupid enough, sorry if I put it this way, but if you're stupid enough to fall for this and go for another 12 months of adventure passes, you will lose another $48 or euros to this game. That's almost 50 euros. You can buy so many things with that.
Really?
The update had failed to renew interest in the
That's expensive.
game, failed to keep dedicated players invested and
I think even the Diablo 4 battle pass is not that expensive.
wanting to play more, but arguably worst of all, this update only made the game worse. Understandably, the community wasn't very happy, and after the release of Cloudy Climb, became quite toxic towards developers. Up to this point, the developers had been somewhat active in the Minecraft Dungeons official Discord, looking to get players' opinions, which was good, although they rarely made use of anything the community suggested on the feedback site. But in general, community opinion of developers was pretty positive.
This is just a classic thing that games developers do. It's not even developers, it's probably someone who gets labeled as a dev, but in reality they're just some intern that needs to post time to time and say, "Hey guys, they're listening to you. We take your feedback into account." And then someone comments, "Then why did you not take into account the last 30 things that we wanted and added things that we were against?" And then there's no response. That's how that happens.
Well, up until the release of Cloudy Climb. After Cloudy Climb's failure, the developers announced they would be doing a Q&A in the Discord. Players were excited to finally air their frustrations to the devs and hopefully receive some answers as to what was going on. But unfortunately, the Q&A was not a live Q&A, but rather a podcast type event where the developers answered questions prepared beforehand. Now, in the past, the developers had done
Oh boy, that sounds really cool and exciting, and that definitely creates a lot of faith in the developers that they, did something like that. Answering pre-made questions that they most likely themselves made up, because why not?
live Q&As where they responded to questions directly from the community, which is what players were once again expecting. Obviously, players were extremely upset and disappointed, and it was around this time that many players began turning on the developers, becoming quite hostile towards them. Players even pointed that out in the Discord specifically. Over time, communication between developers and players only got worse and worse, further fueling players' dislike of them, players only becoming more and more toxic towards them. In the meantime, the game was not getting any more popular, only further declining.
Oh, he almost makes it sound like being toxic towards developers is a bad thing. Listen, when you say that you're gonna value feedback and then you throw it out of the window, throw it into the trash and spit on the person saying it, ignore everything they have been saying and just try to blatantly, visibly gaslight people and trying to believe that you care, yeah, they're gonna turn a little bit hostile to you. Who would have expected that? Wow. It's almost like a quarter animal is going to become aggressive. Who knew that stuff like that happens?
Declining in popularity. In April of 2022, about 5 months after the release of Cloudy Climb, Luminous Night Season 2 would release. It brought a new battle pass and cosmetics, one new boss and some new features, but mostly contained bug fixes. The update wasn't bad, but it was just very much lacking in content, especially when compared to the DLCs it was supposed to be replacing.
What is this, a Starfield update or something?
This made players very concerned for the new seasonal update model and the future of dungeons, as they now saw that the updates the game would be getting were clearly going to be quite minor, not nearly enough to renew interest in the game. There was a small anniversary event a month later, but then that was it for a while. Then, in June of 2022, Minecraft Legends would be announced, Minecraft's take on a real-time strategy type game. Minecraft Dungeons players immediately panicked, believing the small content updates and decreasing communication meant that Minecraft Dungeons might be nearing its end and Legends would take priority. Developers reassured players that Dungeons would still be around though, and it was a separate development team from Legends, but you can't blame them for feeling concerned with the state the game had been in the past few months. More months then passed, no word about future Dungeons.
Dude, make shitty game, people leave shitty game, start panicking because people are leaving and money is not being made, introduce battle pass that has no value, people don't like it, people keep leaving the game, surprise Pikachu face, how did this happen? Yeah.
Updates or content besides the community manager reassuring players it was being worked on. During this time, it became a running joke in the Discord to announce the daily Dungeons news, of which there was almost none every day. Finally, October the 4th, 2022, a Halloween event, a few new skins, not much overall, but most importantly, a reminder to the community that Minecraft Dungeons was still being updated. Finally, after 6 months of patiently
I love these reminders that are like, hey, we know you exist. Spits.
waiting, Season 3 The Fawn Affair would be announced, and it turned the game around. Season 3 The Fawn Affair, released in October 2022, was the developers' response to the almost year-long depression the community had entered. The community felt their feedback had actually been listened to with this update, with many of the balance changes they suggested actually seeing implementation into the game. Besides balance changes, there was also an abundance of new content. There were new cosmetics and pets included with the new battle pass. The tower now had multiplayer mode and had a bigger focus on collaboration, a new level in missions, but most importantly, a new merchant or NPC known as the Enchant Smith was added, allowing players to reroll properties on their gear. To give some context,
Okay, sounds good, I guess. So, the catch?
when you get weapons and armor in dungeons, they come with 3 enchantment slots, and each slot has 3 different enchantments you can choose from and upgrade whenever you level up. Up to this point, the enchantments on an item could not be changed. It was RNG which ones of the roughly 70 that exist you got. But now with the Enchant Smith, they could be re-rolled, removing a very annoying and grindy RNG mechanic that players had been complaining about for a long time. The Enchant
Well, technically, you're not removing an RNG mechanic. You're just replacing it with another RNG mechanic, which is better than nothing. But I don't know about that one. Still kind of looks not great.
Smith also helped make a game mode called the Ancient Hunts, a game mode where you could earn gold to buy items, which was made obsolete by the tower's rewards, relevant again, as gold was required to reroll items. This update added new content, improved older content, and made the game better to play overall. The developers clearly...
Wait, this sounds like what Diablo 4 is currently doing. Did the Diablo 4 devs just steal the progression of Minecraft Dungeons?
realized that previous seasons' lack of content wouldn't be sustainable long term and put a lot of effort into this update, and the community's response was very positive. Players were satisfied and happy, but most importantly were excited about the newfound direction the game's future had taken. However, in the background, Minecraft Dungeons' popularity didn't really recover. It may have been too late.
Well, yeah, you can't recover instantaneously. That's like the thing. Look at World of Warcraft. Dragonflight was good, and people know it was good, but people didn't come back for Dragonflight. Like, the damage was too large. Battle for Azeroth, an absolute fail. Shadowlands, the greatest disaster in the history of World of Warcraft. And then comes Dragonflight, that people are already saying, is it gonna even be good? Let's see. And then it turns out to be good, but that's not enough to get people back. You can't fail time after time after time again, and then just expect that, oh yeah, we're completely back, boys. One semi-decent update, here we are. Millions of players return. No. You literally need to do multiple updates like that again, and get people interested and hooked. Otherwise, it's not happening.
It's October 2022 now. Season 3 has released to extremely positive reception, and players are enjoying the new content and precedent which had been set for the future of the game. 2023 then came around, and players had not heard anything from developers for some time. Understandable, they were probably on holiday break. Players were also more aware that there would probably be larger wait times for future updates since they clearly had more content now. But something was different this time. Unlike past instances where there was little updates but still some communication, this time there was a complete and utter radio silence, not a single word from any developer.
I already can see what's happening here.
Or community manager. As February rolled around, the annual winter event was skipped, which was concerning. In
Yeah, this is most likely where the game dies.
March, the
because this is what happens again. So that exactly what I said previously. Failure after failure after failure after you guessed it, failure. All the players leave. The devs finally make an update that's absolutely not actually crap, and then it's like, oh, no one came back to the game after we made it good. How can this be? Again, it doesn't work like that. So when you make a when you get a win like this and nothing really changes in the player numbers, well, a lot of companies are like, oh yeah, this is not worth it. It's over. It's completely Joker, boys. Pack it up, send it. And I guess this is what happened.
game was made free to play and keep on PlayStation, which did actually give the game its biggest popularity spike since release. That came and went though, and by May of 2023, the game's 3-year anniversary, with no anniversary event this year either, players were getting more and more worried. It wasn't just that the event was skipped, but the game's anniversary wasn't mentioned or acknowledged anywhere at all. It was also around this time that Minecraft Legends had released, and it seemed to be getting all the attention over Dungeons.
At a point like this, also, you know, the devs don't say anything. Another game is released that's more successful. Yeah, obviously everyone understands that this game is dead at this point. So people are gonna just abandon it, and new players are not gonna play it because no one wants to play a dead game. Even if it's a single player progression game, people don't want to play a dead game. That's just how life works.
Dungeons overshadowing it. As 2023 continued with absolutely zero information or communication, most of Dungeons' active players further lost interest, believing that development had stopped or Dungeons had been discontinued. But this only left them more confused, as the game's last update was still very successful. It was now late September of 2023, almost an entire year since the game's last update, and the last time the developers had really communicated with players. Dungeons was at an all-time low popularity, and that's when the official Minecraft Dungeons Twitter account, after 7 months
I mean, this is still more popular than Suicide Squad, so, you know, kind of props on that.
Official Minecraft Dungeons Twitter account, after 7 months of inactivity, would tweet this. The adventure began in May 2020. 3 years later, we're over 25 million heroes strong. Thank you to the amazing community and everyone that joined this journey. Now, this tweet was really out of left field, especially after a year of radio silence, and at first, Dungeons players were excited that something big might be coming. But unfortunately, the article linked in the tweet mentioned that every journey has an end, and Minecraft Dungeons will no longer be receiving updates, with its team moving on to other projects. There were no new features or updates planned for the game. Players' reactions were a mix of sadness that the game was discontinued, but many also had a sense of closure that they finally got official word on the game's state after waiting so long. 3 years after release, Minecraft Dungeons.
Yeah, that's true. At least you know what's happening. You don't have to wait in limbo constantly. I understand that people are like, okay, at least we know.
Had officially been abandoned. But why? Why did Mojang abandon Dungeons? The game was generally well received and liked. The game's last update turned out great. Everything was looking up for Dungeons, so why did they seemingly abandon it after one of its most successful updates? Well, here's one explanation as to why.
I can tell you the reason. Because it was not making enough money. That's it. That's it. The microtransactions were not bought enough. You know, you killed this game by not buying the battle pass.
The game was abandoned. As we talked about, the game had 6 DLCs, and these were actually planned to come out from Minecraft Dungeons release. Minecraft Dungeons outlived its initial plans. It wasn't meant to add new content beyond its 6 DLCs, but the developers or some executives decided to extend the game's lifespan, which is why the seasonal update and battle pass model was later implemented. Minecraft Dungeons was a success. In fact, it's arguably the most or only successful Minecraft spin-off, with over 25 million players having a very positive reception. It's likely the game surpassed the point at which it was considered to be successful monetarily and was no longer making much money, or was not meant to be supported beyond a specific point. It was never meant to be a live service game. There are in fact comments from developers confirming a lot of this information, such as,
That's really strange that it was not meant to be a live service game, though. That seems a little bit just strange. Because Well, Minecraft is owned by who? Xbox. Xbox is owned by who? Microsoft. Does Microsoft has a soul? No, obviously not. So everything gets turned into a live action service anyway. So how the hell did this not get turned into a live action service for Xbox? I have no idea.
As mentioning how it did sell very well, especially on the Game Pass. Developer Mark even mentioned here that the game did even more than was planned and wasn't designed to run forever. Apparently, Dungeons began as a single-player DS game before expanding into what it became, and it was never meant to be a long-term live service.
Also, but if this is true, though, it does make sense why it got cancelled. Because, well, they understood that they can't do this. Mojang understood that they can't make it like that. You have a $20 game, people buy it, people play it for 4 hours, people don't buy the DLC. Because, again, 4-hour game, DLC is going to be at best 2 hours. Fuck that. And that's kind of it. There is value in making something like this and selling, but it's not gonna achieve what you want it to achieve. So they most likely started going the microtransaction route when they saw that, wait a minute, no one's buying our shitty 1-hour DLCs because it's not worth $10. Because it's not. Everyone knows that, right? Everyone most likely understands that. And this is where most likely they understood, yeah, this is not doing what we wanted it to do. So, it happens.
Game with regular updates. The developers did not want the game to overstay its welcome. It was always meant to have a final update. This is very interesting information. On one hand, I can understand the community's frustrations. 3 years, just over 2 realistically if you consider when the game's last update was, isn't exactly long support for a game, and most players expected it to be something like Minecraft that continued receiving updates over 10 years after its release. It was never really communicated clearly to the players that there would be so few seasonal updates, and as such, from their point of view, support for the game ended abruptly and too early, making it seem abandoned.
Well, you never actually tell the players that there's going to be so little in the first place, because that's just asking for destruction. That is just saying people, hey, yeah, you buy this, it's not going to be value, it's not going to be worth your time, but give us money. Yeah, no, you obviously don't say this, because otherwise you just make people not buy your stuff.
But on the other hand, I can commend and respect the developers for not trying to follow the modern day gaming business model of milking players dry until the end of time and deciding that the game would be done at some point. Even the battle passes were generally cheaper than most other games and had no time limit on when they could be.
Whoa, relax there, Chief. If they did not want to milk people to the end of time, they would not have added a battle pass. If this game had a 1 million concurrent players, they would have continued doing it because that they could continue milking it forever. You don't shut this down unless it's not, unless it's a negative.
Be completed, meaning the FOMO element so commonly used to exploit players in other games was not present at all in Dungeons. But there still are some undeniable issues with ending the game's support so abruptly. First of all, there are still lots of bugs and issues in the game. I've been told the Nintendo Switch version runs quite badly and is still not well optimized. Furthermore, the game's overarching issue of boring and repetitive gameplay will now only forever be left unresolved as no new content will be added. There still isn't really an endgame and now never will be. There is no modding support either. Modding is very difficult in Dungeons. As we all know, especially for older games no longer being updated,
modding would have probably been the biggest thing that they could have done, and maybe even saved this once, they knows.
Or user-generated content is what keeps these old games alive, but this is not supported well in Dungeons at all, hurting the game's longevity immensely. So, as it remains today, Minecraft Dungeons is in sort of a limbo state with no future, and is basically doomed to slowly die at this point. At the very least, it could have ended with greater mod and user-generated content support. Ironically, despite
again, still better player numbers than, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, so, technically a win. The Mr. Epic. 10 out of 10. Not bad, here you go. Anyway, this was Quizzer Said, and thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.